Your ears look like you didn't have enough room in the womb, and you're telling us to grow up? Okay, you crinkled up napkin. Whoa, TikTok is absolutely coming for my throat because I dared to stand up to their cancel culture witch hunt. But I'm still right. We're going to break down all the drama and so much more on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily podcast where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet and across our politics from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, and regardless, do remember to hit that like button as we go along, and do comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. So I'm being roasted like never before on TikTok, and before I get into it, I've got to give you guys the context.
Everything is in context. Coconut, you exist in the coconut.
On yesterday's podcast episode, which you should watch if you missed it, I defended Brooke Schofield, a controversial podcaster who's under fire because of her old racist tweets resurfacing from when she was a teenager. I argued that no one was hurt at the time by posts that got 0 likes and were seen by no one, and that she grew up in an environment where those ideas were said by the adults around her, and she was just repeating things, and we should all be allowed to grow and learn and change as people, as she has clearly done, and that we shouldn't be destroyed or have our careers ruined over foolish things we said or thought as teenagers with mushy, underdeveloped brains. Controversial take, I know. But my take did not go over well with all the lovely people on TikTok, particularly because of my skin tone. You're white. Shut up. You're white. Your words don't hold. No weight. Bonus points for grammar there, my friend. You're a white male. I fear your opinion doesn't matter whatsoever. This is the most detached white male thing you could have possibly done. This is coming from a white twink, as always. Babe, are you calling me skinny? White men need to stop opening their mouths on race issues. So there's much more where this came from, but before we get into more of the hate and pushback, I want to talk about this for a second. Essentially, the #1 response to my video that I also posted to TikTok on this subject was, "Shut up, you aren't allowed to speak on this because you're white." And the tweets in question, some of them are offensive or racially insensitive, so the idea is only people of color can speak on this. And that's a sadly common thought process online, but just among progressive people more generally. Yet it is totally wrong. Think about it like this. What I put forward on TikTok and in my episode yesterday was an argument. It was a series of points, of logical analysis, of refutations of what people are saying, of facts, and that series of arguments and points would not have somehow been more correct if a person of color, another creator who is black, said the exact same thing. It would still be the same argument. It would still either be true or false, strong or weak, factual or factually flawed. So to dismiss my argument just because of the color of my skin is utterly illogical. And, of course, racist and racially discriminatory, but whatever, I can handle it. I'm more concerned with the utter lack of logic that many of these NPCs on TikTok are engaged in, where they literally are just shutting off ideas and arguments because the person saying them has the wrong skin tone. That's wild. And it's totally illogical, and it's actually not progressive or woke at all. And even by their own stupid logic, which I would not normally apply, some of the things that Brooke Schofield got in trouble for tweeting is, for example, the F slur used to refer to gay people. So by their own logic, only I can speak on this controversy as a gay man, and all these black women should actually shut up and defer to me. Of course, I don't actually think that, because I think all people are individuals with rationality and critical thinking, or at least they're supposed to be, and should be able to speak on and discuss and argue about anything, and then that argument should be evaluated on its merits, not because of their immutable traits. But by their own logic, I have just as much of a right to speak on this controversy as anyone else. And let's be honest, their real issue is not with who I am, but with what I'm saying. If I was saying the opposite, if I was joining in on the witch hunt and calling for her podcast to be taken off the air, they wouldn't care that I was white. They would be clapping along and saying, yes, king. It's a cheap weaponization of race and an attempt to opt out of actually arguing or defending their ideas that's sadly way too common on the progressive online left. Now, I do have to get into some more of these comments because frankly, the rest of it, they just roasted the shit out of me in genuinely hilarious ways. I know your mother did not go through 9 months of pregnancy for you to pop out like this. I feel so bad for her. Dude, don't bring Hillary into this. Let her be. Another person writes, please take a forever dirt nap. You and everything related to you. So sounds like our friend here is wishing death on me because they disagree with one TikTok video I made, which strikes me as slightly unhinged, but power to ya, I guess. It's really the second part of this. It's like, so the people related to me should also die because you don't like one of my opinions. That makes a lot of sense. Totally not psychotic at all there, babe. Another person writes, your ears look like you didn't have enough room in the womb and you're telling us to grow up? Okay, you crinkled up napkin. They kept calling me old and wrinkly, and I'm like, damn, I'm not that old. I'm not wrinkly. These Gen Alpha and Gen Z people just read me for filth, and I found it hilarious, but when they're calling me old, that hurts a little. Another person writes, LMFAO, not the white frog, speaking on shit he has no business speaking on. Please stop opening your gaping mouth. It's actually insufferable to listen to. The white frog, that's a new one, y'all. And that's the other thing, it's like, if you hate my opinion so much, why are you taking the time to watch my whole video and write a whole comment? Obviously I do commentary, and so I watch videos I disagree with all the time, but that's because that's my job. I do political analysis and commentary and social media reactions and that kind of thing. If I was just a normal everyday person and I was scrolling on my TikTok feed and somebody was saying something I really didn't like, I'd probably just like move on and block them. I wouldn't comment, and then the algorithm will show me more content like that. I mean, your own math is not mathing. Another person wrote, why are old people on TikTok? Y'all, I'm not that old. I am 26 years old. I feel attacked. I feel discriminated against. This is ageism. They finally found something that actually hurts my feelings. Another person writes, Brad, this is exactly why your podcast is a failure. All right, how do you know, babe? You don't know anything about my analytics or my numbers. I think we're doing just fine, but go off, I guess. Grow up. Yeah, we can tell you want us to be as old as you. Wrinkly, I am not wrinkly. This is slander. I genuinely feel like I'm just being absolutely defamed by these Gen Alphas in the comments. And boy, you literally have a cat profile picture, okay? If you're gonna go after people's looks, you should at least say it from your actual face showing, not from behind an avatar of an animal or something. Ultimately though, this kind of stuff, I mostly just find funny. It doesn't really bother me because I'm actually not insecure about my appearance. I definitely used to be growing up as a teenager and all that, and didn't we all? But now, I'm fine with the way I look. I mean, obviously there's things I would change, but I'm just fine with the way I look. So when people start going for my appearance, to me, I don't really mind it that much. And I also sometimes genuinely find it funny. Like some of the shit, they deserve points for creativity. And then also, it's always a refreshing sign to me. It's because it's like, oh, wow, all right, I must have made a pretty good argument because they can't actually say anything to respond to it. They're just going after my ears. But you guys let me know what you think of the reception my arguments are getting on TikTok. Do you agree with my haters? Are you surprised that everything I said went over so poorly? I will point out that actually a lot of people did agree with me, and even the video with all these hate comments still had more likes than hate comments, but the volume of backlash was unusual because usually when I do post on TikTok, my content gets served to more like Republican conservative leaning people on TikTok. But for whatever reason, this one wound up in the woke algorithm and it did not go well in my comments section for me. Up next, huge news just broke about Google, which just lost a major antitrust lawsuit alleging that it is a monopoly and has engaged in shady, bad business practices. I'm going to give you my take on this and it might surprise you, but first, let's take a listen to some news coverage.
Breaking news this hour, a federal judge has just ruled against Google in a massive antitrust lawsuit. That suit involves its core business, online searches. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here to help unpack all of this. Brian, this is a big win for regulators, right? Because they have been trying to argue that there was a monopoly here at Google.
Yeah, and by the way, we're still poring over this 286-page document from the District of Columbia. Really, this is a massive antitrust ruling that the judge in this case is turning onto the Sherman Act. This is basically an antitrust law that we've heard in the context of a big landmark case against Microsoft in 2001, now being used against Google here. And this judge found that there were basically two areas where Google was basically engaging in antitrust: search and text advertising, that they basically controlled the monopoly. They said it for the search engine. They were basically coercing companies into making Google the default search engine and not giving them much choice to go elsewhere, simply because of the massive scale that they have on advertising dollars. And on text advertising, they pointed to a pretty jarring stat that in 2020, its market share in that market was 88%. So you have Amit Mehta, the judge, saying, quote, Google is a monopolist and has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. This is a huge win for the 38 states and territories that were on this suit. What happens next? We don't know. Could there be injunctions? Could there be criminal fines potentially? We'll have to see. But the stock is down almost 4.5% on a day that's already been pretty bad.
Okay, so I do have some thoughts here, but first I just want to explain something real quick. Antitrust, if you've never heard of that, is a category of law where the federal government sometimes brings actions to break up monopolies, trust busting, it used to be called, using the government to break up a dominant company into smaller, different companies to break up a monopoly, basically. Google has been sued under antitrust law and it just lost, but of course it will be subject to appeal and all that. The first question we have to discuss here is whether Google is actually a monopoly. And that kind of depends on what version of the definition of monopoly you look at. Typically, a monopoly is thought of as just when there's only one option, right? When there's only one company offering something. And that definitely wouldn't apply to Google. There are other search engines like Bing, like DuckDuckGo. In fact, there's about 30 search engines all told that you can go and find as alternatives that are pretty easy to access if you want to. Now, another way people look at monopolies is through market share. So how much of a business do they actually have? How much of the industry is in their control? And some people say, though Google disputes this, that they have nearly 90% of the search market captured, which would be somewhat monopolistic for sure, if that's the way you're looking at it. But to me, arguing whether Google is a monopoly is kind of a mistake. It's kind of like missing the point, because not all monopolies are inherently bad. There are some certain industries and sectors that just lend themselves to monopolies. And in antitrust law for a long time, we've had something called the Consumer Welfare Standard, essentially arguing that government intervention to break up monopolies is only ever appropriate and warranted when those monopolies are being used to harm consumers. And that's where I think this whole crusade against Google just totally comes off the rails. Google isn't harming people with its dominance. It's giving us all an excellent product, mostly for free. I use Gmail every single day, as do millions and millions and millions of Americans, and it makes my life so much easier with so many great features and an amazing email service, all 100% free. I use Google Drive, and I think I have such huge files that I pay like $1.99 a month for like an extra premium plan, but most people that use it don't ever need that, and it's just free. I use YouTube, which Google also owns, to be clear, and I actually do pay for YouTube Premium because I can't stand ads, but regardless, you can have access for free to so much entertainment and unlimited information in the world. Same thing with Google Search. I do actually use other ones because I believe Google Search is biased in some ways, but outside of political topics, maybe it is an absolutely excellent and invaluable search tool that, again, is totally free. So this is what I just don't understand. Why the federal government is using resources, and this is kind of a bipartisan thing actually, why the federal government is using taxpayer resources to go after a company that may or may not be a monopoly, but is objectively amazing for consumers and doing the Lord's work in terms of bringing us services and innovative stuff. Like, shouldn't the government maybe be focused on inflation, the border crisis, national security, fixing the frickin' roads, rather than going after a successful company that's just improving the lives of Americans every day? What would the point be of breaking them up? How would separating YouTube from Alphabet that owns Google Search and Gmail and all that, how would that improve anything? I genuinely don't see that argument. The only downside would be A, you're messing with the business that they should be able to run as they see fit, barring some extraordinary circumstance. And two, you'd lose a lot of the interoperability, right? The way you can sign in with Gmail to all this other stuff. I don't know why people are going after this like it's some ambition. This is something that the Republican vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, supports, and I just don't get it. It's not consistent with limited government or free market capitalism, and even on its own merits, what it would improve or achieve is completely unclear to me, yet I see some downsides, and I don't actually see a problem here that needs to be addressed. That's just my take, and look, I'm critical of big tech in many ways, I really am, but I don't want to empower the government to start breaking up companies just for its own sake. And it's disturbing to me that even many Republicans are getting so comfortable with drastic government interventions into the economy like this. Up next, it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from across the clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slug.
Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet, and do hit that like button as we go along to reward me for losing brain cells and suffering, all for your entertainment and pleasure. Today, we're going to react to the single most insufferable woke TikToker of all time, who we actually featured earlier. This is how I discovered her earlier last week when we talked about the White Women for Kamala Zoom call. She was featured on there and engaged in her kind of shtick, which is this incredibly condescending teacher voice talking down to Americans about politics as if we are toddlers or kindergartners or the like.
Just take a beat, and instead we can put our listening ears on.
Well, since that cursed day and cursed event, I have had her content fed to me by the TikTok algorithm, and because I had to see it, so do you. Here is one video where Mrs. Frazzle explains how she would talk to an aunt who is upset at somebody else having lots of tattoos. Let's take a listen.
Gravy, Aunt Maisie, that was not nice, friend. Let me share some of my calm with you, okay? What is one thing we can see that isn't a tattoo? What's one thing you can smell? Shine on, okay? What other people do with their body is none of your beeswax, friend. Not everyone believes in hell, but do you think telling someone they're gonna burn forever and ever is a good choice or a sad choice? It's a super sad choice. Aw, I feel sad when I hurt my friends too. That's catch a bubble, Aunt Maisie. No, all done talking about hell.
Catch a bubble.
Got it. Let's turn this choice around. You can say something kind or keep your inside thought in your brain.
So this just honestly made me queasy. And guys, if you don't understand the catch a bubble thing, it's what you tell kids. So you say catch a bubble when they're talking and they go like this, and then they stop talking. It's literally a trick used by camp counselors and teachers to get first graders to shut up. But that is how Mrs. Frazzled is suggesting that people speak and approach their conservative or Republican or out of touch aunts and uncles. That's kind of the theme of her playlist that this is from, where she gentle parents adults and kind of tries to re-educate them on their ignorant views. And what's crazy about this one is I literally agree with her wholeheartedly on her actual point. I don't care at all if someone else has tattoos. It's not my thing, but knock yourself out. And I would absolutely roll my eyes at like an older relative who was complaining, oh, can you see all her tattoos? But literally this woman makes me want to disagree with her, even though I agree with her. She repels me so greatly that she makes me want to become the absolute antithesis of whatever she says or believes. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because it's essentially fan service. This is content that only appeals to woke, smug liberals who like to see, the people that disagree with them, their old, ignorant, in their view, family members dismissed and derided and condescended to and made fun of. But in the process, this kind of content isolates normal people who aren't already in that camp and actually turns people off to whatever ideas are being advocated, even when those ideas, like, hey, don't judge people for their tattoos, like just let them do whatever they want, it's their body, are pretty reasonable and I think pretty palatable to most Americans who have this kind of live and let live mentality. But no, she, with this approach that makes me want to pull my hair out, literally is turning people away from whatever she's saying, at least normal, sane people, all just to kind of rile up her core base audience and make them feel good. And they can have a smug little laugh at the ignorant rube's expense. It's a totally self-destructive political and social media exercise. And I honestly find it contemptible. And guys, it's not like us reading into it that this is supposed to be condescending and dismissive and a mockery of the people she disagrees with. She has pretty much admitted as much. Let's take a listen to this follow-up video where she explains.
Hi, friend. It's time for me to tell you something that my followers have known for a long time. Whenever you see a video that says this sort of thing at the top, I am condescending on purpose. The satire is that I'm making fun of you for being offended by weird shit. A boy having nail polish? Why do you care? I don't know what argument y'all think you're making all the time. You are mean about skits. Do you send emails to SNL every single week? Don't answer that. I'm sure some of you do. But at the end of the day, people are gonna say shit you don't like. Just stop commenting on their pages and move on. Which is why I largely ignore you. So here, in my happy little corner of the internet, I make skits, making fun of people by talking to them like they're a baby. I actually talk to children way more on the same level. Everybody's like, do you talk to kids that way? No. Because I respect children. I do not respect people who do not respect other people's human rights.
Whew. So, babe, I know you compared yourself to SNL, and I know you say these are skits, but there isn't a funny part. There's no ha 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 moment. It's just like nails on a chalkboard. I will say this, though, at least she's self-aware that she's an incredibly condescending and close-minded person, and that she does not respect and in fact looks down upon the people who disagree with her. I'm glad she admitted that, because at least now we can know I think we already knew this, but now we can know with certainty that we don't need to listen to her. She's not a remotely serious person and doesn't think critically or engage with ideas she disagrees with. She just dismisses them like anyone who disagrees with her is a mental toddler. I will never take that approach to politics, and I think it's one of the most corrosive and divisive attitudes that's unfortunately rising in this country, where you don't even listen to or have any respect for people that disagree with you. You think they're just completely unredeemable and are never right about anything. They're just mental midgets. This is the approach that you see more and more. And I wouldn't say just on the left, but especially on the hard woke progressive left. They do this and they just dismiss other people's views point blank and condescend to them and think they're better than them. And babe, it is not working out for you. Obviously, this is just one tiny, tiny little sliver and example and isn't actually to blame for this, but these attitudes, this way of condescending to older Americans, to rural Americans, to more conservative Americans, and looking down on them from your liberal bubbles is literally why we got Trump. So anyway, your content is just pandering to your core audience of fans while making you incredibly unlikable and turning off anybody who's not already firmly in your ideological camp. I'm sure you're making some bucks from the creator fund, so hope it's worth it. You guys let me know what you think of this TikToker's content in the comments below, and do remember to hit that like button to reward me suffering through this genuinely terrible, painful content. And now I'll read a few of your comments before we wrap up today's show. One person says, if you're going to get hurt over what a celebrity tweeted when they were a teenager, then you really need to buy a ticket and go live in a third world country for a year so you learn what this stuff is that really hurts. Yeah, this is a good point. Like, If you're pressed about what some gossip podcast host tweeted in 2012 and you're crying like some of the people in these videos are, like, baby, you must not have, for all you're talking about how oppressed you are, you must not have any real problems if that's what's on your mind. Like, get a grip. Another person said, I'm Mexican American, and the bean dip joke legit made me laugh. It made me laugh too, honestly. I think it's funny. It's obviously just a joke. It is not meant seriously. I would never support being hateful towards Mexicans or any other group of people, but we should be able to make jokes and laugh at them. And that one genuinely was funny, okay? Another person says, rule number 1 in dealing with the thought police, never apologize. Yeah, it's sad because I really would like to live in a world where people take accountability, admit when they did something wrong, and own up to it and apologize. But I've just never really seen in a situation like this, and I've seen many of them over the years, I've never really seen one instance where an apology made things better. These people that are mad and that are running these witch hunts, they don't want, like, they're not going to accept an apology, and often then they just nitpick and pick apart the apology, and it just feeds the story more. And so it's unfortunately something I'd probably recommend against doing in this situation, which is kind of a sign of how messed up this movement is, that they've made apologizing and actually taking accountability for things a bad idea. Talk about warped incentives and distorted priorities, man. Another person writes, I really want to know who is digging up these tweets from years ago. Who has this kind of time on their hands? I barely have time to shower and keep my kitchen clean every day. Some people desperately need a hobby or a healthy outlet of some sort. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, you have to actually be sick and kind of a loser to spend your time digging through thousands and thousands of someone's posts all the way back to 2012 just to find a way to ruin their life. A happy, stable person with meaning in their life does not spend their time doing that. I'm convinced. Another person writes, why is it always old tweets? Why not old posts anywhere else? Well, that's an interesting question. I think the reason is that in the 2010s and even a little before that, Twitter was kind of the Wild West of the internet. Like, there was very much a Call of Duty chat room type atmosphere on there where people would always just say the most crazy stuff. It was never taken too seriously. And so the receipts on there, I think, tend to be more damning when stripped of that context that a lot of people aren't old enough to remember. And so when you dig them up years later, they look really bad, but people were just like shit posting constantly. And the idea that this stuff would come back to haunt them hadn't really entered anyone's mind, nor had the idea that people would take it all as 100% serious when a lot of it isn't actually meant that way. Another person says, so as a person of color, it really disappoints me how you address the Brooke situation. You will never know what it feels like as a black person to get racist comments, and for you to address it in the way you did shows me the type of creator you are. Yes, it does show you the type of creator I am. I'm the type of person and commentator who believes in grace, growth, and forgiveness, not cancel culture. If you didn't know that or you don't like that, then maybe this channel isn't right for you. Another person wrote, is it just me or is the audio kind of weird? And they wrote that on yesterday's episode. No, it is not just you. I had an issue where in the middle of recording, my mic switched off without realizing it, and it started recording just from my computer microphone. And I tried to repair the audio, and this was the best I could do, but I just couldn't get it to sound good the way it normally does. So I am sorry for that, and I appreciate you guys sticking it out with me. All right, guys, that's a wrap for today. One quick announcement. I'm making a new YouTube channel where I will post clips from my regular weekly or twice a week television appearances that I'm doing now. It's not the same kind of content I do on here, so I don't want to push it in this feed, but if you are interested in hearing more of my political analysis on the election and everything else, check out the channel that I'm linking in the description of this episode. Subscribe to it. I'll be posting all my clips on there, and I hope to see you over there and that we can grow a second channel with a little bit of a different focus. But if that interests you, the link is in the description. Now, do remember to subscribe if you aren't yet. I would love to hit 150,000 before the end of August, the end of the summer. That's a big goal of mine, so if you could help me get there, I'd really appreciate it. Do remember to hit the like button before you go, and do comment. I do read the comments, and I'm curious for what you all thought of today's episode. And with that, we'll talk again tomorrow.